It was a crime that seemed ripped from the pages of a noir novel. A wealthy millionaire, a beautiful girlfriend with a secret, a professional athlete, and a murder that would remain unsolved for nearly a decade and a half. This is the story of Bill McLaughlin, Nanette Packard, and Eric Naposki, a real-life tragedy of love, lies, and greed that became known as the Millionaire's Mistake. In the early 1990s, Bill McLaughlin was living the dream. A successful entrepreneur in his mid-50s, he had made millions inventing a medical device. He lived in a luxurious, gated home in the wealthy community of Newport Beach, California. He had 3 children and seemed to have found love again with a woman named Nanette Packard. Nanette was a mother of 2 in her 20s, and by all accounts, Bill was devoted to her and her children. He provided them with a life of comfort and stability. The couple appeared happy, taking trips together to places like Hawaii. For Bill, life was good, but he had no idea that his relationship with Nanette was built on a foundation of secrets. What Bill didn't know was that there was another man in the picture. Put simply, Nanette was having a secret affair with a man named Eric Naposki. She had met Eric in the early 90s at a gym. Eric was a former NFL linebacker who had played for the New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts. By this time, his professional football career was over, and he was living in California, working as a security guard and a nightclub bouncer. He was big, strong, and charismatic. Nanette and Eric began a passionate secret affair. To keep Bill from finding out, Nanette lied to both men. She told Eric that Bill was just her business partner, not her boyfriend, and she told Bill that Eric was just a friend. It was a dangerous juggling act, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. That moment came on the night of December 15th, 1994. Bill McLaughlin was at home in his kitchen, sitting at the table. Suddenly, an intruder wearing a black ski mask burst in and opened fire, shooting Bill 6 times in the chest. He died instantly. The killer vanished into the night, leaving behind no witnesses and very little evidence. The initial investigation hit a wall. There were no clear suspects, and the case went cold. For 15 long years, Bill's family was left with only painful questions. Who would want to kill a beloved father in such a violent way, and why? While the police didn't have enough for an arrest, some things didn't add up. For one, Nanette Packard's behavior after the murder raised eyebrows. Within weeks of Bill's death, she was seen with Eric Naposki, and they quickly moved in together. More than that, investigators discovered that Nanette stood to gain a lot of money from Bill's death. A significant portion of his will, a $150,000 payout, and access to his beach house. There was also a $1 million life insurance policy. Then in 1996, Nanette was arrested for forging Bill's name on checks and stealing from his accounts before he died. She pleaded guilty to grand theft and forgery and served 6 months in jail. The financial motive was becoming clear, but there still wasn't enough evidence to charge her with murder. The case went cold for years until 2009, when a cold case detective by the name of Montgomery decided to take a fresh look at Bill McLaughlin's murder and pinned Eric as the culprit. In a dramatic bi-coastal sting operation in May 2009, police arrested Eric Naposki in Connecticut, where he was living with a fiancée. At the exact same time, Nanette Packard was arrested in California. After 15 years, the suspects were finally in custody. So, how exactly did the new detective figure out Eric was the actual killer? Let's break it down, step by step. See, just days after Bill was shot 6 times in the chest with a 9mm handgun, police talked to Eric Naposki. At this point, Naposki didn't know the killer had used a 9mm Beretta, but he was nervous. In that first conversation, Naposki did something that a truly innocent person would have no reason to do. He volunteered information about his own guns. He told detectives that he had recently purchased a 9mm Beretta handgun, the exact same type of weapon used in the murder. But he had a story ready. He claimed he had loaned that specific gun to a friend just months earlier, and the friend had promptly lost it. He said he never reported it stolen because he hoped it would turn up. For the initial investigators, this was a red flag, but without the gun or more proof, it wasn't enough to make an arrest. The case went cold. The new detective on the case decided to do something incredibly tedious but brilliant. He dug up over 60 old tapes of police interviews from 1994 and listened to every single one. He wasn't looking for a confession. He was looking for inconsistencies. He compared Naposki's story with what other witnesses said. This is where Naposki's lies about the gun began to unravel. As Montgomery listened to the tapes, he discovered a key contradiction. Naposki claimed he had lost the 9mm Beretta months before the December 15th murder. However, interviews with other witnesses revealed that Naposki had been seen in possession of that very gun just 2 weeks before Bill McLaughlin was killed. This was a massive hole in Eric's story. If he had the gun 2 weeks before the murder, he couldn't have lost it months earlier. Why would he lie about the timeline? The only logical conclusion for an investigator was that he was lying to distance himself from the murder weapon. The case against Naposki grew even stronger when a woman who had been his neighbor in 1994 came forward. She had called police anonymously back in 1998, but her tip was now being taken seriously. She told a chilling story. Weeks before the murder, she was chatting with Naposki, and he mentioned that he wanted Bill McLaughlin dead. Then, in early January 1995, right after the murder, she saw him again. She asked him directly if he had done it. According to her testimony, Naposki didn't deny it. He just smiled and said, "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't." She also said he told her he had gotten rid of his gun. This wasn't just about a lie anymore. It was about behavior that pointed directly to guilt. More importantly, the gun evidence wasn't just about Naposki's words, it was also about his actions. Investigators learned that 2 months before the murder, Naposki had visited a hardware store. He did 2 things there. One, he had duplicate keys made. The killer had used a key to enter McLaughlin's gated home without forcing the door. Second, he asked an employee to help him make a fake silencer for a 9mm handgun, claiming it was for a movie. Both of these actions showed premeditation. He was planning for a specific weapon and a specific method of entry. At Naposki's trial, all of these pieces came together. The prosecution brought in a ballistics expert who confirmed that the bullets that killed McLaughlin were fired from a 9mm Beretta model 92, Naposki's exact model of gun. They also presented evidence that Bill McLaughlin did not own a 9mm handgun, meaning the killer had to have brought it with him. The timeline of Naposki's lies was laid out for the jury. He initially said he lost the gun months before the murder. Witnesses saw him with it 2 weeks before. He claimed he wasn't having an affair with Nanette, yet they were secretly together. He also gave shifting alibis for where he was the night of the murder. In light of all these lies, the prosecutor, Matt Murphy, argued that an innocent person wouldn't need to lie, especially about a gun that matched the murder weapon. Naposki's own words, his attempt to be clever by admitting he had a gun but claiming it was gone, became the very thing that convicted him. The jury agreed, finding him guilty of first-degree murder. In Nanette's case, the prosecution established that she was the mastermind. They argued that she had convinced her lover, Eric, to kill Bill so they could be together and she could collect the insurance money. It was a classic murder-for-hire plot driven by greed. Both Nanette Packard and Eric Naposki were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They have spent over a decade behind bars. In the end, it wasn't a smoking gun that solved the case, because the murder weapon was never found. It was the smoking lie about the gun. It was a perfect example of how in a case with no forensic evidence, a person's own words, when proven to be false, can be the most damning evidence of all. But more importantly, it is a clear example of how lust can turn out to be fatal. See, if Eric had not let his lust consume him, Bill McLaughlin would still be alive today.